Hi, I'm Michael Brown, the author of The Presence Process. What this video is a presentation called Awakening to Innocence, or Inner Sense. And in this presentation, what I'm going to share with you are the insights out of which the Presence Process procedure came. And this will enable you to be educated about what the process is and as to whether it's something that you want to do for yourself. What this process does is put the responsibility into your hands for the quality of your life experience. So if you're prepared to take responsibility for your life experience, then this is a video that you might want to watch. Enjoy.
I heard you call me from your dream. I heard your prayer, I heard your scream. I felt the storm that you were under. Your thoughts like lightning and thunder.
So today what we want to do is unwrap presents. It's Christmas time, so we're going to unwrap some presents. And we want to unwrap some insights. And I have no idea how we're going to do this. It's like jumping off a cliff and seeing where we land. I know it has something to do with that, which is the pathway of awareness into this experience of the world, and then a return to innocence or innocence. So it's got something to do with innocence. And what we get told is that we were innocent before we entered the experience. Well, everything is backwards, upside down, and inside out. So actually, we need experience in order to gain innocence. It's not the other way around. And often what we do is we turn on our experience because we have all sorts of experience in this world that we regret. And so we turn on our own experience and wish it hadn't happened. But actually, every aspect of our experience is absolutely essential for us to awaken to innocence or inner sense. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off today looking at how we enter the world unconsciously in order to gain experience. And when we enter the world unconsciously, as we all do, it is a painful experience or a traumatic experience or a confusing experience. And it's confusing and painful and traumatic because we go through it unconsciously. But we have to go through it unconsciously in order to enter the experiences we've entered. Because if we were all fully conscious, we would never do half the things we've done. And therefore have deprived ourselves of absolutely essential experience, which is required to activate innocence. So we're first going to look at this journey of entering the world unconsciously. And once we kind of get through that, we'll take a short break. And don't wander off, don't talk too much. Go, use the bathroom, have a drink of water, come back. And then we'll carry on of the journey that's required in order to reactivate or reawaken to innocence. So this week, Tuesday, at a time when our sun is supposed to be really dormant, it erupted. And there's all these solar flares happening. And some of you may have noticed problems with your cell phones, bad reception, computer problems, all these things. And this is all a result of the activity on the sun. What you also may have noticed is that between Tuesday and now, you had some emotional stuff going on. Really intense stuff going on. This is because of the sun. Now the Mayans, I think it was around about 5,200 years ago, marked this time period. They said the sun is going to speak. Listen to the sun. And we can't understand how they could know that. The reason we can't understand that is we live in separation consciousness. We believe that we are separate from the rest of the solar system, and that we can just carry on and behave separately and independently of the solar system. Well, humanity is about to have a really, really big wake-up, because the sun is about to speak. It's already talking. And when the sun talks, all sorts of things happen. The Aztecs also pointed at this time, in fact, they even designed a calendar for us, the Aztec sun calendar. In the center of the calendar is a mouth, and it's open with a glyph for speaking. It said, the sun is going to speak. So we don't really understand what that means, because we no longer speak the language of the emotional body. We are mental, and we're physically transfixed by the world. So what does it mean to us, the sun is going to speak? Because we're transfixed by the world, it appears as if the sun is doing something to us. Remember, it's backwards, inside out, and upside down. Okay. We don't notice that the sun, when it speaks loudly, it can blow out our satellites. It affects all our weather conditions. It causes tornadoes suddenly in London. All these sorts of things. And what we also don't notice is that we go through emotional stuff, all relates to the heart. And the reason we don't notice this is because we're living in separation consciousness and we don't have insight. We perceive the world as something that's happening outside, not inside. We don't have insight, very few of us. What we can't see is that the sun is merely reflecting an evolutionary process that is taking place within us. It's not really the sun that's speaking. It's something within us that is awakening and beginning to speak. So, in order to consciously participate in this process, we need to understand how we came into this world, into the physical, mental, and emotional experience that we're in now, and how it is we can go to the point where we can start to understand the language of the solar system, which is spoken initially through vibration. None of us can speak vibration, so it's very difficult for us to understand that language, although we're getting there very quickly. The next level of the language is metaphor. We actually use metaphor all the time, although we don't take it seriously. For example, Jesus only spoke in metaphor. Didn't speak about anything literally. So he was still speaking that language of the heart. The language that we speak is mental, concepts, words, thoughts, and physical interaction with the world. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to be throwing stuff out today. And just go with it. Don't try and make sense of it. And we're just going to gradually unwrap the situation that we're in now as humanity. And not only unwrap it, in other words, give us a chance to integrate it on some level, but also unwrap our responsibility within it. Because if we don't understand what our responsibility is, if we cannot respond to it, we're going to react to it. The Mayans and the Aztecs and many other indigenous cultures said that if we do not respond to the sun speaking, we will lose our physical body. And that is a probability that up to 2/3 of the Earth's population will leave because of this. So it's very important that we learn how to respond to the sun, or to respond to our own internal evolutionary process, as opposed to react to it. In other words, it's time to exit the unconscious part of our journey, the experiencing, gathering part of our journey. We all have exactly the right amount of experience required to wake up our insight. And insight means to be able to listen to the voice of the heart, not the head, The head is a passageway. The mental body is a great passageway. But we want to listen to the voice of the heart, because it is going to most accurately tell us what is happening in our vibrational body. And when I use the word vibrational, most people use the word spiritual. But for me, I can't grasp spiritual. I don't know what that is. Vibrational I can grasp because I can get a sense of what that is. So I use the word vibrational. So let's begin at the beginning. And what we're going to start with is the pathway of awareness. A pathway of awareness which is so obvious, which we all function on, which has brought us all to this point, and yet is invisible to us when we're unconscious. And the pathway of awareness is very easy to see when you watch a child in its first period of development. When a child is born, it cries, it emotes. It's an emotional being. Then it starts learning to use its emotional body, its emotions, to communicate, to consciously use those emotions to steer things. It starts going into a mental place. And only then does it start to become physically aware of itself and its own sense of being on a physical level. This physical awareness only comes the moment it names something. The moment we name something, we only do so because it matters to us. It matters, becomes matter. And matter and mother are the same word. The first word usually that we name is mother, mama. So the mother is the first one to matter. And then as soon as the mother matters, the child no longer sees the world as an energy thing. It sees it as a solid, and everything else becomes solid. Because now the world matters. It's now in the physical world. But this cycle that goes from emotional to mental to physical can be seen in a larger cyclic pattern. A cyclic pattern that when we were indigenous by nature, in other words, we considered ourselves as part of this planet, as opposed to thinking the planet was something we were supposed to parcel up and sell for profit. When we were still indigenous and we considered the planet as part of our body, we understood that there were cycles we went through in order to arrive here. And what we did is we had rites of passage to deliver us from point A to point B to point C until we became integrated beings, responsible beings here. We no longer have rites of passage, but we still follow them unconsciously. And these rites of passage would take place every 7 years for the first 4 cycles of our life. So if you notice when a child, in the first 7 years of a child's life, it is an emotional being. At around 7 years, the child gets sent into an education system. And the focus becomes more on the mental, and in fact the emotional gets suppressed. In order to integrate the mental body, you have to somewhat suppress the emotional body. In order to concentrate, you have to get rid of spontaneity. So for the next 7 years, there's a mental body development. And then around about 14 years old, there's suddenly a physical transformation that takes place in that being. And that being goes from mentally focused into physically aware. And this is very easy to see because a child of 12 years old, or actually you can't really say that anymore. I'm just giving you the cycle because of what we've done to ourselves, because of drinking milk with hormones and eating meat with hormones. We've changed these cycles. They've adjusted. So don't generally stick to 7 years anymore. But puberty can now sometimes happen at 11 years old. It can happen very early. But prior to puberty, a child will go kissing. And after puberty, a child will go kissing. Okay, there's suddenly an awareness. Prior to puberty, a child will hang around with its own sex. After puberty, a child will become fascinated with the opposite sex. So there's a change there. And that 7-year cycle from puberty continues until 21. And then what we do, we have our 21st birthday because we've officially arrived on the planet. Go off and multiply, make more. Okay. So what we used to have when we were more indigenously conscious is we used to have rites of passage. And some of these would take place as naming ceremonies. So the simplest way to look at it is a naming ceremony. A child would be given a name at the time of its birth. Not a name picked out of a book, or a name that reflected what was happening around it in the world when it was born. Because that was not seen as a separate incident. So if there was a lot of storm and thunder, well, thunderstorming child, or whatever, it would be given a name to reflect that. And then at 7 years old, there would be another naming ceremony. The child would be given another name to reflect the fact that there was a change in the child. Not only a change in the child, but in the way that it was interacting with its environment. It was no longer going to run around spontaneously. Now it would have to sit down and listen to stories and get mentally activated. And then around the age of 14, the child would be given another name. And at this time, the child will then be given physical responsibilities around the community, because to start the physical development. And then at the age of about 21, those individuals would be taken out not with the parents, because the parents were never really involved in bringing up the children. Grandparents. Parents not involved. Grandparents were the educators, the elders. Today we remove our elders. We wonder why we're so stupid. We removed all the wisdom. So the elders would then take this individual out somewhere and in some way alter their experience, give them an altered experience. Whether it was leaving them alone in a desert for 4 days and 4 nights, or whether it was feeding them a medicinal plant that would alter their consciousness, but to give them a bigger picture of the universe, to expand their consciousness, and also to give them an opportunity to grab hold of their vision. We don't have visions anymore, we have dreams. We always talk about dreams because we're sleeping people. But in that time, we would go for our vision. What am I here for? And then that being would come back and become an adult member of the community. Those rites of passage had a very important role. And that role was growing, developing the energy body, the energy and motion body, the emotional body. Today we live in a society where the emotional body is ignored. And you can see that, for example, in the archetypes of our religions. If you take Christianity, for example, Jesus is the mental body, Mother Mary is the physical body, Mary Magdalene is the emotional body. Where's Mary Magdalene? She's a whore, she's a prostitute, she's out of the picture. If you want to be saved, you have to go to Jesus, and he's helped by his mother, the Virgin Mary. So what that archetype tells you is if you want help, you need to go to the mental body and the physical body. Don't go near the emotional body. It's the source of sin. Don't feel. So these are how the archetypes are woven and reflecting what's going on inside of us. So it's not like anyone's doing anything to us. These are reflections of states that we're in now. Because we don't have rites of passage and all these things are gone, we do not grow our emotional body. The number one cause of our discomfort, confusion, and everything is lack of emotional body awareness. And emotional body awareness isn't going around having dramatic attacks and crying and all that. It's got nothing to do with emotional body awareness. Emotional body awareness is felt perception. And felt perception is the ability to feel the consequences of our thoughts, words, and deeds before we even put them into play. And if we can feel our thoughts, words, and deeds before we put them into play, we wouldn't do half the things we do, because we'd feel the pain of it. We wouldn't be able to run businesses the way we run businesses. Wouldn't be able to dig into the ground the way we dig into the ground. Wouldn't be able to pollute the way we'd pollute, because we would feel the consequences of that. There's a saying, where there is love, there is no law. Where there is love, there is no law. Well, where the emotional body is fully developed, where the heart is functioning, you don't have to tell anyone how to behave. You don't need a law. They can feel what they're doing. But if the emotional body is shut down, we can't feel anything. Then we function mentally and physically. So what happens now is we enter this 7-year cycle very unconsciously. But we still honor the rites of passage. So one of the things that happened when we turned 14 years old, around that time, and we entered our physical entry into the world. Today, the teenagers go and do it anyway, but it becomes an addiction. It no longer has a purpose, it just becomes an addiction. And then when we were 21, we'd have our experience altered. Yeah, go and get the keg. Get a keg of beer and have a party and blow your mind. We still do the rites of passage, we just do it unconsciously. So we're all still doing what we're supposed to be doing, we're just functioning unconsciously. If we continue to function unconsciously, it means instead of going out into the desert and having a vision quest, we get into a car and crash into somebody, drunk. In other words, the same energy, the same energetic pattern comes out destructively as opposed to creatively. And that's a lot of what's happening in our world at the moment. Everyone is doing what they're supposed to, just unconsciously. So, when we enter this world, we bring in what is called our destiny, which is also called our karma. And you'll hear many people talking about karma. Oh, it's just my karma. Well, actually, karma is everything. Good karma, bad karma, all karma. Karma is, my best interpretation of karma is consequence. We come here as consequence of something from the past. And as we interact with our life, whether we react or respond, we set up consequence. It's all about consequence. So, where is this karma? I mean, it's my karma, but where is our karma? Well, we carry our karma with us, like a tattoo. And we bring it in with us when we enter this world. And that karma is imprinted on our vibrational body, and then it's imprinted on our emotional body, and then it's imprinted on our mental body, and then it's imprinted on our physical body. And then we have it here. We have it in the physical, mental, emotional. And to the ability that we can speak those different languages, we can work with our karma. So, the closer we can go to the causal point of our karma, which is the vibrational, the more impact we can have on it. As individuals at the moment in the world, the place that we can go to very easily is our emotional body. So as we come into the world, we're going from a vibrational state, which happens in the womb. We enter the womb 2 months into pregnancy, roughly 2 months into pregnancy. And the Russians, when they developed Kirlian photography, even in the 50s, were photographing women's auras and showing a presence outside a pregnant woman. 2 months, the presence entered the woman. So we wait about 2 months for the vehicle to be prepared to get into a state to be able to hold our consciousness, and then we enter the vehicle. So we're in the womb also for a 7 cycle, 7 months. While we are in the womb for 7 months, whatever happens to our mother, and it's not just our mother, but everything that's happening around her, father, everything that's going on around her, everything that happens to our mother is reflected in the body of the mother. So if the mother is in stress or upset or anything, this is reflected in the heartbeat, in the blood pumping, in the movement of the body, in the tone of the voice, in the temperature of the body, in the way the breathing is happening. And all these are simply vibrations. They have a vibrational impact on the vibrational body of the consciousness that's in the womb. Then, once we are born, we enter an emotional state. Whatever happens around us as children is then tattooed into our emotional body, into our energy in motion body, emotion body. Then, around about the age of 7, it's more a mental process. At about the age of 7, we get taught magic, right? We go to school and we get taught magic. And the way we're taught magic is we get taught words. And you have to spell words, right? They're spells. Okay. Once you've learned how to spell words, you get taught to put them in sentences. right? And what is a sentence? Someone does something wrong, they get sentenced, right? So sentences are just another way of saying belief systems that you are sentencing, being sentenced to. The moment you get taught sentences, you get taught stories, right? Whose story? His story, right? We get taught history. And history is a story told to us by someone who won. And the winners never tell the truth. Okay. So that's part of the mental body stuff going on. And then in the physical world, we start interacting physically with the world. What we do not see when we're going through this unconsciously, what is not obvious to us, is that we are having the same experience over and over again. The experience we have in the womb repeats from the time we're born till we're 7 years old. This experience repeats again until we're 14 years old. This experience repeats again until we're 21 years old. And as long as we remain unconscious, we keep having the same experience over and over and over again. The reason we can't see this is because by the time we are 21, we are physically transfixed by this world. This means we believe that the physical world is the cause of something. But it's not, it's the effect. The physical world is the effect. So we believe that the cause of what's happening to us is actually the effect. That's why when we try and change things, by fiddling with effect, that's called ineffectual behavior, right? Ineffectual behavior. So let's have an example of how this repeats over and over. Because we can't see that. We cannot see we're living in the same experience over and over while we are physically transfixed by the world. We can't see it because the nature of the world, it is the magician. It has sleight of hand. Today looks different from yesterday. Different things are happening. This year is different from last year because the physical world is always changing. And it appears, therefore, something always different is going on. That's its sleight of hand. In order to see what's going on, one has to wake up, in a sense, insight. You cannot see what's really going on by looking outside. You have to look inside. Outside is just a reflection of what's going on inside. So, for example, let's say that about a month before I was born, my mother and father have a massive argument, and my father walks out. I'm not going to take this anymore. Leave. And my mother gets very upset. And she feels abandoned. And this feeling of abandonment is a salad made up of fear, anger, and grief. The only three emotional dysfunctions we need to concern ourselves about: fear, anger, or grief. If you ask a child what's wrong with it, a child will never say, "I'm feeling so abandoned." It doesn't speak that language. Okay. A child doesn't say, "I'm feeling really perplexed today." Okay. A child doesn't do that. A child says, "I'm sad, I'm cross, I'm scared." There's it. The trinity of emotional dysfunction. So this feeling that my mother will feel will be a salad of fear, anger, and grief, which combines the feelings of my mother and father when they go through this interaction and he walks out and she's left alone. So that's a month before I'm born. What will happen, then another experience will happen at around 6 years old. Roughly 7 years ahead. And in that experience, let's take an example. Say they got back together, try to work it out, but at that time it was decided that they're going to separate. Divorce. This is not going to work. A divorce happens. Okay? Again, there's fear, anger, and grief, and a sense of abandonment. This time, the child, when it was in the womb, got that sense of abandonment through the vibrations of the mother's body. In other words, it was imprinted in the child's vibrational body. The child wasn't lying in the womb going, "Oh, this abandonment is really hard stuff." There's no concepts. It's just vibrations. So in the 6-month period, it's imprinted into the vibrational body. The way my mother breathes, the way her posture, everything related to that experience. At 6 years old, the child isn't fully developed with concepts. It's still in an emotional place. That divorce that happens there roughly 7 years later, we can say, explain it. If you go to a 7-year-old and ask it what's happening when the parents are divorcing, can't really explain it. Doesn't really know what's going on. Can't quite grasp it. Just this fear, anger, and grief. Scared, sad, cross. But it's implanted in the emotional body. Then what will happen exactly 7 years later, say around 13 years old, this child, now a teenager, may, for example, have a best friend in the neighborhood. And this best friend is really connected to him. And suddenly the best friend and the family get up and move out the neighborhood. And the child experiences abandonment. Fear, anger, and grief. I don't have a friend anymore. Why they move away. All this stuff happens. But really now it's imprinted in the mental body. In other words, this 13-year-old will interact with that experience by telling itself more about itself and about the world in relation to this experience. Belief systems. Then, 7 years later, say around the age of 20, this young person may now be in love with someone, engaged, getting married, and at the day before the wedding, the person runs away. Abandonment again. This time, the experience is very physical. The focus is on how could I be let down? My family's going to be embarrassed. We've booked the church. How dare she treat me this way? It's very externalized into the physical world. It's a very physical experience imprinted in the physical body. What is not obvious when we're going through this type of experience is that these events are the exact same event repeating itself over and over again. Because if you take that event and you look at each one with emotional body awareness, what you'll notice is they all feel identical. They have the exact same emotional signature. And this 7-year cycle will continue until this being awakens to it. For example, at the age of about 27 or so, they may be waiting for a job and not get the job, someone else gets it. And so the cycle will continue, and it will appear as if different things are happening all the time. So the problem is, when we become adults, we perceive the world as happening to us rather than us radiating into the world. So I'm just going to grab this here to give an example. This is how we behave as adults. It's natural that we behave this way because the whole world behaves this way. Our politicians behave this way, our priests behave this way, our school teachers behave this way, our parents behave this way, the news broadcasters behave this way. Everyone behaves this way. So for us, this is normality. But actually, it's insanity. And this is how it is. What we believe in this world is that if I take this and I throw it over there, if I want to change the way I throw it, that I must come over here and move it about on the floor to change the way I throw it. In other words, if I don't like my job, that I need to change my job. Get another one. If I don't like my relationship, I need to find someone else. If I don't like the country I live in, I need to move elsewhere. Okay? But what we will find through that behavior is roughly 3 months after making the move, or entering a new relationship, or starting a new job, the same things start to happen. It just looks different. The same things start to happen that caused us to want to change initially. And that's because by moving the tape around on the floor, I have not changed the way I'm throwing the tape. Where the tape is in my hand, this is the emotional body. And we talk about entering, this work is about entering at the level of emotional body, not vibrational body. So we are not going to go and try and do work here. We're going to work here at the emotional body. That's what this work is about. Because that's a language we can speak. The language of the emotional body is feeling. The language of the mental body is concepts, thoughts, analysis, understanding. The language of the physical body is physical sensation. So we can speak all these languages, so let's speak the one that takes us closest to the causal point. We yet cannot speak light and sound, so the vibrational body is a little bit out of the way, but it's coming fast. So, where I'm holding the tape in my hand, this is the emotional body. As it flies through the air, this is the mental body, and where it lies on the floor, that's the physical body. By messing with it on the floor, I'm not going to change the way I throw it. Even by messing with it in the air, I'm not going to change the way I throw it. And I have to bring it back into my hand. Now, to take an extreme case of how this is, if someone is very unaware and they have terminal cancer, and they are extremely unaware, what they will do is they will run to the tape on the floor and do something. They will physically act on their condition. Cut it out, blast it with radiation, do all sorts of physical processes to try and affect what their condition is. Now, this may cause the condition to go away. It's called sedation or control of the condition. It will pop up somewhere else. It's the same with an addiction. Sickness and addiction are actually the same thing. It's the same as addiction. An addiction, if you go and try and suppress the addiction by suppressing, controlling, sedating the behavior, it will pop up somewhere else. Stop smoking the cigarettes, head for the fridge. It'll be transferred. So when we're very unconscious, what we do is we interact solely on the physical body, because we perceive that the physical body is the cause. The physical world, the physical circumstances are the cause of our condition, of our experience. Then, so let's say a couple of 100 years ago, sore leg, cut it off, right? You know, we interacted very physically. And then in the last 100 years, we sort of started getting more aware. And so what we did is we'll go into this place. We'll talk about it. Okay. We'll find someone to talk about it. Get ourselves a therapist. The problem with talking about it is that we tell stories. Because we're paying someone, we need to say something. We tell these stories. Then eventually we'll tell so many stories, we'll have to go and see someone else to help us with the stories we've told. Get out of that. So therapy is fine. It's very useful if you can go to a therapist who knows how the mind works and everything. And they can direct you to the causal point. But if we really want to make a change in the causal point of our experience, in the quality of our experience, it's very important that we go and adjust what's happening with us energetically, emotionally. And it's only in the recent time, very recent human history, that this has been dawning in our awareness. And there's a reason for this, and we can come back to it. Evolution is a reverse of the pathway of awareness into the world. Evolution is a reversal of the pathway of awareness into the world. In other words, in our last 13,000-year cycle, we've spent most of that time physical, very physical. And then we kind of started getting mental, machines and stuff. Okay. And then now we're going, my feelings, Then we started getting in touch with emotional, and we're heading towards the vibrational. Evolution is a reversal by humanity of the process of entering the physical world, a conscious reversal. We are now, according to the Aztecs, we are now, as of December, somewhere in December, I think it was December, around October the 13th, 1999, in the emotional body of the planet, in the emotional body of our development. Purely mental stuff doesn't work anymore. Purely physical stuff, don't even go there. We're now in an emotional place. And just as the physical part of our experience took a really long time to integrate, thousands and thousands of years, just being very physical, our mental part of our experience took just a few hundred years. Much shorter, exponential. The emotional part of our experience, roughly about 13 years. Boom, very short. The vibrational part, no time. It's instantaneous. No time. Understand that the emotional body is the causal point of our experience. But actually it's not if you think about it, if you just logically think about it. If we want peace, if we really, really want peace, there's three ways we can approach it. The one way is we can approach it the way our politicians do. Everyone please shut up and sit still. Okay, that's how our politicians approach peace. In other words, we enforce it. Now, if you place the word force and peace in the same sentence, nothing is going to be accomplished. And you can see that as we've tried to enforce peace around our world, it has actually just suppressed what's going on and exploded out. So we cannot physically force people to be at peace. You can give them everything they require until they're completely dependent on you and sedate and control them that way. But you can't force them to be at peace. Another way we could approach peace is we can talk about it. We can have a few conferences. We can write up some manifestos. We're like the United Nations. We can get together and have a peace gathering, peace conference. But we can also see that that is useless. You cannot talk anybody into peace. Peace is not a mental concept. What is peace? It's a feeling. Peace isn't a physical circumstance. You can have the most fantastic physical circumstances you want. You can be the most famous person in the world, have all the money you want, and want to kill yourself every day. You can have nothing, be sitting on the beach in a hut, and really just be living off the fish in the sea, and just be as happy, completely happy, if you feel good. If you feel good. So peace is a feeling. Love is a feeling. Even what we think of as God, for us, if we want to have a real experience of what that is, that's a feeling. If someone sits down and meditates, and actually has what's called a good meditation, it's really not anything more than the great feeling. The great feeling. Feels good. So, if we want to change the quality of our experience, and I'm stressing the quality of the experience, very important, because we are in an experience of consequence. There are things that are going to happen to us. Consequence. I also call it Kali Yuga. Consequence. When we are now going to reap what we sowed. Consequence. So there are things that are going to happen to us, whether we like it or not. So this is not about the new age thing of going, I control my own reality. I control my own reality, which is one of the most arrogant approaches to life that one can take. Because if we control our own reality, then if I controlled my own reality, if I created my own reality, I would be able to say what's in your bag right now. I'd be able to say what's in Helen's cupboards in the kitchen. Surely that's part of my reality, and I created it. So we don't create our own reality. At this level, we co-create our experience of a reality that is unfolding. We co-create our experience of a reality that is unfolding. So we're in this together. And we are going to have certain experiences. And what's happening now, as we started off saying, is that the sun is going to speak. Now, what that means is the sun is going to enter a solar cycle unprecedented in human history, because it won't have entered the solar cycle for about 13,000 years. And this solar cycle will look to some like it's the end of the world. Massive solar activity. Now, what happens when there's massive solar activity? Aside from knocking out all the satellites and all the things that run on satellites, there's other things that happen. It causes geomagnetic storms. Geomagnetic storms. And the thing to understand about a geomagnetic storm is that it is something happening to the magnetic field of the planet. And although we like to think we are separate from this planet, we are not. We are part of this planet. We also have a magnetic field around us. And we use our magnetic field to suppress memories. Our memories are suppressed or brought to us through magnetism. That's why some memories are attractive to us. Some memories are so pushed away, it's using magnetic field to repel and attract. So up to this period of our evolution, we have gone through intense experiences. Many, many lifetimes of intense experiences. Experiences that are themes that run in groups of people, and those groups of people are called families. And all those groups that come together because we're all related. What we really are is not physical, mental, or emotional. Those are our expressions. We're all the same vibrational field. But we come together as families because as families we share certain emotional or energetic dysfunctions. That's what draws us together. If it was love that drew us together, we'd be with everybody. We'd just love everybody. So we come together to work on certain things. These things are suppressed to most of us. They've been suppressed for generations. Generations. And we have an ability to suppress them. In fact, we have become masters of self-deception. We have become masters of suppressing our discomforts. And we've had to do that because we don't have the tools to work on them. Very different age we're living in now. We have tools. What happens is, when we have geomagnetic storms on the planet, when the planet's magnetic field starts going weird, so does ours. And we lose the ability to suppress memory. In other words, memories that we don't even know we have start popping up. But they don't pop up as thoughts in our head. Now, when we live in a time-based paradigm, when we lived in a mental plane, memory to us is like this. What did I have for lunch yesterday? I get an image in my head. And if I stay with that image long enough, I can smell the food. I can remember the company. That's the sort of memory I work with in a time-based paradigm. But the memories I'm talking about, these are just energetic resonances that are going to come up, that we've held down deep in our emotional body through massive sedation and control. In fact, we're even allowed to sedate and control because if we weren't given sedation and control tools, the planet would go ballistic. So we're allowed alcohol and cigarettes. Cigarettes is a way to control and sedate. It's a way to control the mental body. Alcohol is a way to control the emotional body. It sedates the emotional body. When we can't deal with what's going on in emotions, alcohol sedates that. So there's many other tools that we use for sedation and control, which is sex, food, gambling, work, whatever it takes to distract us from what's really going on. That's our sedation and control tactic. But what's going to happen, or what is happening, is we are going to gradually, and that is already happening, lose the ability to keep these memories suppressed, because our magnetic field is going to be disrupted by the magnetic field of the planet, which is being spoken to by the sun. The sun is speaking. And the Mayans and the Aztecs and those people said, when the sun speaks, you better listen to the sun. Because if you don't hear the sun, it's going to kill you. You're going to enter situations that are going to be self-destructive. Why? Because the memories that come up are not going to come up as images in the head, mental concepts. That's why we're so mental that when we ask a question, we want a mental concept as an answer. We do everything mentally. The memories that are going to come up are going to be energy that is going to be physically, mentally, and emotionally manifest in our experience. It's going to be happening within us, but because we don't have insight, we are going to perceive it happening outside. In other words, the things that I suppress from myself, more precisely, my emotional interactions with these events, that's what the memory is. Now, if I choose to go into combat with the ghosts of the past and the phantoms of the future, because that's what we do. We look at a situation happening and we project our past on it. This is what this means to me from the past, and this is what's going to probably happen in the future. So I'm not really seeing anybody. For example, if a man walks into the room and he reminds me of my father, that's called a reflection. I'm no longer seeing that man. I'm now seeing my father, who's not even there. I'm seeing a ghost. If I then start behaving around that person like the way I behaved around my father, that's called a projection. Now my behavior has just completely exited authenticity. I'm now lost in an illusion. We're all behaving like that all the time in a time-based paradigm. We're looking at the world, we're seeing what it means as far as the past, and we're projecting a future scenario. In such a circumstance, two things can happen. I can either respond to what's going on, or I can react. If I react, I'm going to make more of whatever that is. So, for example, if anger is coming up, deep anger, so let's use the father example. Deep anger related to my father comes up. When this man walks in the room who reminds me of my father, deep anger comes up. The real memory is the anger, is the feeling. It's not even anger. Anger is a mental concept that we've put around an emotional dysfunction, a way an energy is not moving freely. We've called it anger. If it moves differently, we might call it fear or might call it grief. But the real memory is this energetic pattern that's coming up, what I'm feeling. But if my emotional body awareness is completely shut down, I'm not even aware of what I'm feeling. I'm just going to project that out there. If I react to the memory and I get angry with this person in front of me who's reflecting my father, I'm bringing anger into a situation in which actually there isn't any. This present moment, there's no anger. It's a reflection of anger. But I'm going to bring anger into the situation. Okay? If I rather choose to respond to the situation, in other words, I tune into what I'm feeling and work with it on that level, I will neutralize that. I will neutralize that. So I'm either creating more or I'm neutralizing. At the moment, as we can call the sun speaking, what the sun is saying is clear it up. Clear it up. We are now moving through the emotional into the vibrational. You cannot enter the vibrational realm if you're emotionally unconscious. You need to clear out the emotional. You've moved through the physical, you've moved through the mental, now it's time to clean up the emotional. Clean it up. Clean up your act. What most of the world is doing at the moment is reacting. So we've seen public figures or even leaders of countries who actually go after someone who reflects what they themselves are suppressing and finds nothing there. But in the process of going after it, leaves a path of devastation and destruction. We can do the same thing in our daily lives whenever we react to anybody. Because in the present moment, there is no fear, anger, or grief. It's the nature of the present moment. In the present moment, there is only gratitude. There's no fear, anger, and grief. Any fear, anger, and grief we feel related to any experience we are having in any moment is always related to something that has happened to us in the past and that we are then projecting into our future. So, our task is to respond to what's going on. Not to run around and try and save people in this world, but to learn to respond to what's going on. And through our example of response, set energy patterns for a new way of behaving in the world. Because unless we adopt responsibility, we self-destruct. And what the presence process is a tool that teaches us how to respond. It's not about good. It's not about easy. It's not about fulfilling our needs and wants. Anyone who comes to the presence process thinking that this is going to fulfill your needs and wants. This is not about that. Needs and wants are endless. This is not about needs and wants. This is about doing the work to clear the phantoms and the ghosts so we can arrive in this moment and make some real choices for ourselves and set some real consequences in motion that we are going to live with eternally. That's what it's for. It's designed to transform our interaction with the world. It's not designed to make us feel good and make life easy. The next few years, eliminate easy and good from the vocabulary. Take a lot of the trauma and stress out of life. It's not going to be good and easy. It's going to be real. And what we want to do is interact with that vibration and that emotional circumstance that we're all going to be confronting, because the Son is speaking, and it's not necessarily about the Son speaking. The Son, where we are, is a physical representation, or a representation in our solar system of what God is. That's why they used to say in the ancient days, you can't look in the face of God. You can't look in the sun, you'll get blinded. So the Son is really also a representation of our own heart center, of what's going on in our heart center. Our heart center is the channel from the vibrational into the physical and mental world. It's the channel. If that channel is blocked, the discomfort drives us into behaviors that are self-destructive. So what we want to do is to be able to go back into the heart center and make adjustments there and free it up so that whatever these shifts that are going on, that we're experiencing, our evolution, that they come through in a way that we can participate with them consciously. In other words, respond to them rather than react to them.